Hey there, folks. Thanks for watching. He's Travis, I'm Dan, and this is Extra Points. Well, it's a great time to be a sports fan in Wisconsin. The Brewers are in the NLCS, the Packers are 5-0, the Badgers are the number 4 ranked team in the country, and it looks like we're not going to have to sit through another miserable season for the Milwaukee Bucks, at least not early on, as a couple days ago, the NBA announced that they are canceling the first couple weeks of the regular season. Players and owners still can't seem to come to an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement. So no Bucks means by default no misery, at least as far as the NBA is concerned in this state. Anyways, more on a couple of those topics in a bit, but first, last week of the prep football's regular season is tomorrow, and there certainly are plenty of area storylines. Travis?
Yeah, we kind of get an idea of how the playoffs are going to shake out, who's in, who's out, as we finish up the season here. Just kind of looking at area teams. Portage and Cambria-Friesland are both out, no playoffs for them, but there is kind of an intriguing game for Portage. They're going to travel to Reedsburg on Friday. Now their team has won in conference all year. Reedsburg's got one win. Portage is winless. So this is a prime opportunity for Portage to kind of get off the snide and get a victory. I think they got a good shot at doing so, so that'll be one to watch. Teams that are in the playoffs, or at least eligible and likely in, include Partyville, Montello, Princeton, Green Lake, Lodi, Westfield, and Ryle. All them teams are guaranteed at least a 500 record or better in conference. They're all probably likely in the playoffs. That leaves Poinet. Now they need to beat Lodi on Friday in the big rivalry game, and if they lose that game, there will be no playoffs in Poinet. And last time they missed the playoffs was 2006, so they're kind of used to being in the postseason. So it'll be an interesting game for them. And there's also a few teams got outside shots at winning conference titles, or at least a share of titles. Rio, Lodi, Westfield, and the Montello, Princeton, Green Lake Co-op are all in second place. They need to win, and they need kind of upsets for the league leaders. All are pretty unlikely to happen, but they still got a shot at winning conference titles. So there's a few interesting storylines going into the last week of the season.
Certainly fun, and especially for the kids, that get into the playoffs. First thing Saturday, they'll be following on the WI's website to see where their playoff road starts. That's when things, at least the pairings, the field will be set Friday night after the games are finished. The pairings on Saturday around noon. By the way, we will on Monday next week, not Thursday like normal, be with you at Extra Points, breaking down those playoff matchups and talking a little bit about that, looking ahead to Friday or Saturday, whatever, however things shake down, because for this season, Friday, Saturday are options as opposed to how things were previously. So some exciting matchups there. Anyway, prep football also was the backdrop last week for the Brewers' dramatic 3-2 extra innings win over the Arizona Diamondbacks in Game 5 of that National League divisional series. And it really was, it was an interesting game. All the way through. You really couldn't sense which team had the momentum. I was at Partyville's football game for the end of that Brewers game, and I certainly, as much as I would have liked to have been watching that Brewers game, because of the circumstances, I think I won't forget anytime soon the way that game ended and my reaction and where I was. How will you remember that game, Travis?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I was at the Portage football game, and a couple of trainers on the sideline were following the game on their phones and stuff. So I kind of knew the situation, and but when I actually found out they won, I could hear people in the bleachers, shouting, "Brewers win, yay!" And there was kind of applause. So that was kind of neat to kind of learn of it that way. If we couldn't see the game in person, I guess it was just kind of neat to kind of learn about it that way.
In a sense, really, not being able to watch the game on television almost added to the drama. Like you said, some people were following along on their phone. I was checking on my phone, and just in between plays, the jams that Brewers relievers got in late and getting a couple guys on base for the Brewers late. added to the drama an awful lot. And so I think that suspense
Yep.
and finding out that way, like I said, added an awful lot to how I'll remember that game. Meantime, the Packers are 5-0, like I mentioned, after their 25-14 win over the Falcons on Sunday night. And in that game, the Packers got behind 14-0. The Falcons scored on their first 2 offensive possessions of the game. Packers defense looked like they couldn't do anything right. The Falcons had 2 long drives, got those touchdowns. The Packers, Grant had that fumble. Nothing was going right. And then something clicked, and from that point forward, the Packers were rolling. So it was an awfully impressive win for how the Packers handled that adversity early on and bounced back to win that game. Travis, your impressions?
Yeah, what impressed me was, basically they won the game with 2 backup tackles. When Chad Clifton left early in the game with a hamstring injury, and Brian Blaga was already out with a knee injury, we had 2, right tackle and a left tackle that basically haven't played much, and there was a little adjustment period. But once Aaron Rodgers got comfortable and knew that they could protect him, he was off and running, and that was an impressive victory, I thought.
And the announcers talked a little bit about it too on the NBC telecast. Early on when those injuries happened, it looked like the Packers got a little conservative with the playbook. They were helping out on those tackles, trying to prevent the pass rush, and then as soon as those tackles got a little more comfortable, you really saw the Packers open up the playbook a little bit. Those tackles handled that challenge well, and the Packers just kind of sprungboard from there. I thought. Just moving on a little bit to how this win stacks up in the 5 so far for the Packers. I thought the win over New Orleans was impressive for the fact that I think New Orleans is the second best team in the NFC. So what you saw there was maybe a little bit of the Packers establishing themselves as the team to beat. Obviously I think as the Super Bowl champions, but every season is different. This win for me was maybe just a little bit more impressive for the reason you mentioned, the tackles, and also falling behind early and not letting that rattle them, especially on the road. And the way that the Falcons lost to the Packers in the playoffs last year, this game for the Falcons was almost like a playoff game. They wanted to get even, and they weren't able to. So, so it was a great win for the Packers. They're 5-0 now, which means the fans are starting to talk about, can the Packers go 16-0? I don't think so. Which begs the question, Travis, when are they going to lose? When do you think?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. They do have some tough games kind of on the road coming up. At Minnesota is always tough, but they're not very good this year. They also got to play at San Diego in Week 9, but I think they can handle that. That means Week 12 at Detroit on Thanksgiving. There's going to be a lot of people with their televisions on as they eat their turkey dinners. I personally think that'll be the game they slip up, just because when Detroit was bad, that seemed like a tough game to play there on Thanksgiving, and they're obviously really good this year, and it's like their Super Bowl. They get hyped up for playing in front of a national audience, and I just think that they're going to be ready to go for the Packers, and that'll be a tough game for the Packers. I think they probably could very easily lose that one, and the question will be, will Detroit also be the undefeated that for that game? It very well could be.
If the Packers are undefeated going into that game. This is way before my time, and I can't even remember the exact year, but it was one of those years in the 60s, the glory years with Vince Lombardi. The Packers' only loss in one of those years was to the Lions on Thanksgiving, and so I'm sure you'll hear plenty about that if that's the case. I personally don't think Green Bay will get to that game undefeated. I think they're going to lose in Week 9 at San Diego, coming out of a bye week. Personally, I think that coming out of that bye week, the Packers are going to have a little bit of rust, which is, I guess, counterintuitive, because you would think that they would be crisp with the extra practice time and preparation time. But I think it's going to cause a little bit of rust. It's on the road, and San Diego is an awfully good team. They haven't looked necessarily great at times, but they're 4-1, and there's an awful lot of talent on the team. That's where I think the Packers slip up. And but moving on after that, I don't really see many hiccups for the Packers. But anyways, that by the way, the Badgers are back in action this week after a bye last week at home against Indiana. And I think the question here is not so much will the Badgers win, but by how much. And Vegas thinks it's going to be by 40 or more, as they have the Badgers as 40-point favorites. That's the latest I heard. So if you're a fan of close games, don't watch. If you like an awful lot of fireworks, there's going to probably be a lot of them at Camp Randall Stadium. So like I said, Travis, we will be on Monday with a breakdown of the playoff matchups. So look for us then. Until then, everybody, take care.